Back at it on the SuccessFlow podcast, and I am coming at you solo today because my partner in crime, Stephen Harris, is recovering. And I won't give any of the details because we will be discussing it on next week's podcast. But Stephen had quite the scare, and he is doing well and on the mend, but he needs just a little bit more rest and recovery. Here's a little teaser there to make sure you tune in next week as he'll be back. He's feeling good. As for today, you've got me, and I am going to try to deliver some help on one of the areas that you hear us talk about a lot and what's very near and dear to my heart in regard to deep work as it's associated with knowledge work and any area of your life. The ability to focus and find flow states and get into the zone of performance where time dilates and you feel your best and you perform your best. It's helped me get past some of the most challenging times in my life. And it's really what I live for, besides the connection to those that are important to me, my friends and family. The art of getting into flow and really executing on the things that are important in my life, on the missions that I've chosen to be a part of, is what I live for. That's when life's at its best. It's when I'm helping others and making the impact that I want to have. So on that note, it's really twofold. We're going to do a refresher on some of the deep work concepts and how deep work can literally solve all of the problems in your life if you can put the frameworks and game plan together and then commit to the time to eliminate those distractions and go deep on what your, again, key problems in your life or key areas where you are trying to grow and achieve specific outcomes. So that being said, the second half is going to be specifically around the habit of ferocity. And not sure how deep we've gone on that in the past, but either way, it's going to be an important refresher and one of the habits that really set you apart in the frame of when things get hard, can you produce well when you're at your worst? And those individuals that have this habit of ferocity, that actually their performance improves when things get hard, those are the folks that are really helping have an impact in the world. So that's the bamboo banger for today, is deep work and the habit of ferocity. And I wanted to kind of kick off in the jungle. And what I mean by that is I like the concept of knowledge work and comparing it to humans in knowledge work need to operate like lions. And lions don't spend all day and all night chasing their prey and running after everything out in the savannah. They conserve energy and they exert intense bursts of effort when the moment is needed. And they go all out, providing all this effort to provide for their family and to survive in regard to hunting. And then they rest and recover and lay around to really refuel themselves, re-energize, and then get ready to do again. And this cycle allows them to live both a life of eating well and abundance, king of the jungle, as well as enjoying the space of existing in general and being. And I feel that the best humans do this the same, operate in the same way, these intense bursts of work where we're going super hard. We're focused. We know exactly what we're trying to hunt or what we're trying to achieve, and it's detailed and we're completely in the moment. And then once we've hit some of the outcomes that we want, we've hit our milestones or those key metrics for a while, we might have an exit or there's an end of a quarter or a year, a specific time period, then we relax and recharge and enjoy the fruits of our labor. So that is the metaphor I wanted to kick us off with, because, and you can do this in the macro and the micro. The macro, that might come to a vacation, you hammer a project, you work crazy for a quarter, and then you get a week or two or whatever your vacation timeline and flexibility is, then you can take that downtime and really rest, enjoy the fruits of your labor. And in the micro, day to day, we can only do focused, deep, relentless work for so long until there's diminishing returns and our energy levels are depleted. These rest throughout the day, again, sprint, focus, very specific on what we're trying to do, and then a walk, a meditation, which everyone knows is my favorite, a nap even during the day, proper fuel, rest, recharge, and then back to the specific block. When we're on, and when we're off. Now, this is much easier said than done. I fail at this all the time, but it is a theme in my life that I really am trying to make the most consistent part, because we talk a lot about work-life integration on this podcast, to where everything is kind of one. You have boundaries that you kind of put up to make sure that no balls are getting dropped and that we are recharging. But when it integrates like that, that's when we're cranking. That's when we're happy. That's when we're fulfilled. More important than being happy. Happiness is fleeting, and anyone expects to be happy all the time is setting a tough expectation that will never be reached. But in this cycle that we're talking about, that is what we're trying to get to, and taking action on these things, whatever it might be. And we'll get to some examples here shortly. Action is the key. Like the waiting and procrastinating and distracting yourself, just scrolling or watching television or avoiding what you know you need to do, that is not the way. And I think back to the jungle, there's a quote, I think it's, every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must outrun the fastest lion or it will be killed. And every morning in the same savannah, a lion wakes up and it knows it's got to outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve. It doesn't matter whether you're the lion or the gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better be running. And I think that is just such a great metaphor on, doesn't matter what you're doing, what your role in this world is, what path that you want to take. You've got to take action based on your role in that environment. And ideally, you're building and really putting something out that only you can in the world, because that is what defining success for yourself is, and what this podcast is all about. So now that we've started off in the jungle and we've got our animal metaphors on the way, let's jump into deep work and how we can get committed to it. And deep work requires commitment and motivation. If you're not willing to invest the effort, and the art of getting to work is hard for you and it's a drag every single day, that's a whole separate problem that we've covered on the podcast before, and gets back to that massive transformative purpose, what your why is. And again, this isn't turning your hobbies and passions into your work or your business. That can also backfire. It's doable. Your work might not be, like for myself, for example, I never thought that my sense of purpose would be derived by selling software to the office of the CFO for assured integrated reporting. This is not the sexiest dinner conversation that's ever happened, but because of the time invested in it, with stacking wins, going through some very difficult times, learning complex processes in the business world, it became a purpose and passion because of that process, of the difficulty and sometimes mundane nature of the topic. And that's what we have to have as a basic starting point, and that'll tie to the habit of ferocity, is there's got to be something keeping you in the game, something that's giving you that drive, or none of this deep work is going to happen. It just simply can't. You can't do deep work on something that you can't find some sort of internal locus of motivation to be self-directed and go do. So that's kind of table stakes. Also with deep work, we are taking for granted that to achieve deep work, the lifestyle pillars that we talk about on this podcast all the time have to be met for the most part, or most of them, in regard to sleep, hydration, nutrition, movement, all of those things. We're taking into account that you're taking care of those things, because that's where all your most immediate wins are going to be when you get those locked. But to get into deep work, we're going to assume that you're doing the majority of those things to make sure you're in the right state and you have your biology is working for you. Diving into deep work, again, this was popularized, the term, I don't think he invented it, but it's been definitely popularized by Cal Newport. And it's not just a productivity hack. It's the ultimate solution to making significant progress in your professional and personal life. And the way Cal Newport puts it is deep work's the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. Again, we're talking knowledge work here. It's a skill that allows you to quickly master complicated information and produce better results in less time. That's what we're looking for. Do less better. And so this concept of deep work, it enables the resolution of complex problems through intentional, uninterrupted effort. Once these problems are identified, we can prioritize them, limit them down to the real needle movers, to use corporate speak, that when we're trying to really push these projects and deals and opportunities and businesses, really move them to the next level. Once these problems are identified and we prioritize them, we block the time out, that's when we can get into the deep work on them. And this is where the magic happens. This is what the top of the top are doing from a leadership perspective. CEOs and C-suites trying to look around corners and identify where risks might be, specific strategic growth initiatives, risk mitigation, all of the above. This is how they're doing it. It takes a lot of energy. And this also applies to any of the problems of your personal life. Having financial issues, going in and blocking the time to do a deep dive on all the transactions, on what your outgoing is versus your incoming finances, on your health, blocking the time to do specific exercises that you are focused on in that area. Focus is the new IQ. I've said it all the time. Sure, we need a certain level of IQ and intelligence to get in the game. Most people listening to this podcast, you have that. What many don't have, even with really high intelligence and specific skill sets, is this ability to focus. And sometimes focusing is just not doing distraction. And that's what is going to be the key in this market as technology and artificial intelligence is being improved. Those that are able to focus on the complex and therefore execute, because if you're only doing one task, the likelihood of you achieving and executing on a positive outcome from that task goes way up. It's very likely, if you're using all of your energy, that you're going to be able to hit these. So where we're going to start off in the deep work process is having a clear goal. Beginning each deep work session with a clear, defined goal, knowing what you're aiming to achieve before you start. Then we're going to not do distraction. We're going to eliminate all those distractions. This comes down to our environment. This environment that we've talked about in other podcasts with Steven's sister, Shannon, an environment that supports focus, that has your right energy level, clean and decluttered. Marie Kondo. Your brain, when there are more things around you, just has more to worry and stress about. So the cleaner your environment is, and whether that's your digital environment with your laptop screens with files all over them and your inbox, we've got to get that crystal clear so we know exactly what we're working on. There's nothing pulling at us. We've got to eliminate the potential distractions that can take us off course. And then we're going to put time parameters on. Put a specific block in. Put a little Pomodoro timer like I've got here. Set that time, whatever it might be, click start. We love constraints. Again, Parkinson's law, time will expand or shrink based on the task that it's given. So if you give a specific deadline for a specific outcome, again, we're increasing the likelihood for execution. And this follows the natural rhythm of our human energy cycles. A good example for this for me, and this has not happened only once or twice, but in the sales world, you run by a pipeline, right? The number of opportunities that you have in pursuit, you work back from your target and making sure that you have 5x, 6, 7x of that number, because then you have a close rate and you get the percentage of that pipeline, and it becomes a numbers game. That pipeline generation, sometimes if you start closing a lot of business, like winning or losing, it can dwindle very quickly and sneak up on you. And when that happens, that's when deep work has to occur. That's when, as a sales professional, all focus needs to go that's not being used on closing what is in the pipeline still is building more of it. And so to be able to do that and dive deep into some of the accounts that we have and who are in them and how you're going about approaching them, it takes a lot of deep work, and where you have to just block out the time and only do that, because if you are task switching, you're wasting energy. The cognitive load of task switching exponentially drains your energy levels, reducing focus. You're tired, all the above. And this is how most people are working. It's reactive and not proactive. Deep work is very proactive. With so much coming at us, it's natural to be reactive, and sometimes we're going to have to be. But that's where, can the small fires burn? Let them burn for a little while before you put them out. If they're not going to be detrimental to the outcome, you may have to just let those small fires burn for a while you build up the water reserve that you have to extinguish all of the others in the savannah. Trying to weave this jungle theme in a little too hard right now, maybe, but you get the idea. I think the quote that Stephen Kotler, who wrote a book that changed my life, The Art of the Impossible, that we broke down, the modern knowledge worker must learn how to block out the noise, because we're living in an era where attention is the new IQ. The key is not just knowledge, but the ability to focus deeply and consistently. That word again, consistently being able to show up and do what you know needs to be done, even though we're in a cycle of the sprint and deep work, and then the rest and recovery and enjoying the fruits of our labor. Some of the examples of these are Bill Gates, think weeks, like him or dislike him. He's getting a lot of negative press these days. Can't argue with the outcomes that he has achieved with Microsoft and beyond. But he'll isolate himself, I don't know how many times a year. I know it's at least once a year, in a cabin where he's only got books, problems, and things that he's trying to innovate on. That goes back to the cave day that we talked about and broke down in a previous episode. Executive think tanks are like this. The executive think tank is a great example where group flow comes to be. Very specific tasks. An agenda is going to be laid out where they know what they're going to discuss, what they're trying to get to the bottom of, and they're doing deep work as a group to come up with solutions to that problem with takeaway action items that they can pass along to their team and below. And again, going back to flow state, how you can get into group flow and the exponential effect, the force multiplier of multiple people and the mastermind effect of bringing your brains together, super focused on one problem, and how quickly and powerfully it can be resolved, really to me is this result of flow. and getting into that zone of just effortless action, where you're connecting the dots at a rapid pace and really feeling the work become a part of you, as cheesy as that might sound, that's when we're cranking. That's when we get the benefit of feeling alive, and all of the other problems outside of our world just disappear because we are so in the moment of work. And back to that quote from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the godfather of flow, is it's the state where people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The experience is so enjoyable that people will continue to do it even at a greater cost for the sheer sake of doing it. So that is this concept of, can we turn work into play? If you can get into that state where just the act of doing the task because of this flow state is so rewarding, it feels so good, the dopamine, norepinephrine, all of the feel-good chemicals are just rocking and rolling, and you feel like you're actually contributing to this place on the planet, that's where the magic happens. Shifting gears into the habit of ferocity. This is also Stephen Kotler quote. He has a whole Mind Valley course where he collaborated with Vishen Lakhiani on this. And I think it's a really cool concept. And the habit of ferocity is the relentless pursuit of goals, maintaining momentum even in the face of obstacles. It's not just motivation. It's a deeply ingrained trait that propels people forward with grit and focus. Specifically quoted, Stephen calls it the willingness to push harder, go further, and persist longer than anyone else because your goal's worth it. And I think a good example of this, where it clicked for me, was there are certain runners that when you hit a hill on a long run, almost every runner goes slower. Some even walk. That's the human nature because it's difficult, it's uncomfortable, etc. But the real crazy high performers, whether it's running or cycling, Lance Armstrong, great example, they hit a hill and they actually go harder, which, I mean, the goal is to maintain the pace that you would have even on, a flat running surface with the extra effort. It's really about keeping pace. I'm not a huge runner, but these folks push into a higher gear because it gets harder and it's immediate. And turning this into knowledge work, when some of those little fires get inflamed and start getting bigger, people in the knowledge work world, the business world, or whatever your craft is, lean into that problem and start focusing and coming up with solutions at a rapid pace and just start working harder the more difficult it becomes. And that's how growth is obtained. That's how we get past obstacles, is this not throwing in the towel or not, hopefully not quitting, but retracting from the problem and letting it pile up even harder. No, it's immediately snapping into, there's no other choice but to increase my effort when the challenge shows itself. And again, back to polarizing individuals, but Elon Musk is known for this, right? The most popular entrepreneur individual of our time. When things get hard and he's borderline bankruptcy, he just finds a way. He works from the time he wakes up and goes to sleep. This isn't going to be for everybody, but he is the definition of the habit of ferocity. Is when he's backs against the wall, they're going bankrupt if the next rocket isn't effective, if they don't sell, if they weren't able to get profitable at Tesla within around 6 months, they were done. They were cooked. He found a way to motivate the team, upped his effort, and figured out a way. Michael Phelps in the pool, He was renowned for training more intensely and consistently than his peers. And when other swimmers were taking days off, he was in the pool, pushing his body and his mind to new limits. His to-do list, as you may recall from our previous episode, wake up, get in pool. His ferocity wasn't just about talent. It was about unwavering dedication to the goal of being the best Olympian in history, if not swimmer. J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter, she was told no so many times while she's building this masterpiece of 7 books. And every time she got told no, she just kept writing. She kept publishing. She kept building her plan, weaving her art together in those rejections and challenges and her personal life hardships. She had that habit of ferocity, their commitment to finishing the story, making sure it got out into the world. And we all know how successful that was. I think that to develop this habit of ferocity, I think we get a lot of opportunities to do it. When it feels like the walls are closing in on you, when multiple aspects of life are hammering at you. And this is where the meditation comes in for me, is the ability to actually feel it and notice it and create that space in between the trigger and response of how tough things are getting and how your effort may not match what you would ideally like the outcome to be. But if you know and can say, I know this feeling of this being difficult, that the road is getting bumpy, and to make it automatic, the habit, so we're calling it the habit of ferocity, to automatically go into a different mode of effort. And it's just effort. It's just trying a little bit harder and sitting through the discomfort, knowing it's not going to be pleasant. But the outcome, when you get past it, that is the winning. And the more you do it, the more it happens. It's exponential. Winning creates winning. I guess my challenge and takeaway for y'all is to either your massive transformative purpose, if you've identified it after listening to this podcast, or the work that you're doing elsewhere, go back to it, how you're spending your time, where life is challenging you right now. Put this into action to fuel your continuous energy toward that specific problem. Block these times and push through the discomfort to embrace the struggle as a part of growth, tearing down the muscle tissue while the muscle tissue grows back. Create these rituals that prime you for deep work. Clean up your environment so you can have that intense focus. Make sure that those life pillars are on track. Get your sleep, be hydrated, clean up the diet, move your body. It doesn't have to be crazy through the roof, but consistency there is going to be more than half the battle for having the energy levels to do this difficult work. And foster resilience. Your recovery periods aren't just breaks. They're a vital part of maintaining ferocity over the long term. So identify that number one challenge in your life right now. Block out a few deep work sessions this week, this month. Apply these principles and see how it propels you forward, and share those wins with us. Maybe we'll have you on the podcast, talk about it. And I think a great way to tie it out from Cal Newport for a podcast on deep work is clarity about what matters provides clarity about what does not. Deep work is your path to mastering what truly moves the needle in your life and your work. We will be back at you with Steven next week. The episode is going to be great. You'll hear what happened to him and how he's used the habit of ferocity to get through a pretty big challenge. So looking forward to being back at you next week. Hope this solo pod was valuable. Shoot me a note if I can help with anything on your subconscious mind. If you want to book a session, just reach out, and we'll be back at you next week. Flow on, folks.